So welcome everyone. My name is Vandana Atara, and I'm the creator of Vandana Light Healing and also this podcast. It's called the Adult Child Podcast in the Adult Child in Recovery. And today I have a wonderful guest that I'm happy to introduce everybody to, whoever's tuning in and meant to be on this call today. And her name is Sara Avant Stover. Welcome, Sara. Thank you for
Hi,
joining me.
thanks. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So right now, I just would love to share a little bit about you, and then we'll just jump into, how what your unique message is, your mission, and your contribution to help adult children who have experienced years and years of trauma growing up in those tender years. So Sara is a best-selling author, business strategist, teacher, and mentor. She helps spiritual women entrepreneurs like me break free of limiting beliefs and identities. I will have to book a separate call for that. She's also built a multiple six-figure business or businesses based on sound business strategies, ancient and spiritual principles, and their inner wisdom to help people fulfill their highest potential without burning out or betraying their values. And we all know that this can be extremely overwhelming, having to juggle like work life and personal life. So thank you for doing that, just to create more balance and meaning for people who have a unique message too. Sara is also a multi-certified yoga and Buddhist meditation teacher. She has a daily practice of doing both for the past 25 years. Throughout that time, she's been uplifting the lives of tens, thousands of women worldwide, also growing her business from the ground up twice, facing and overcoming tremendous inner and outer obstacles while prioritizing creating a business and life that are deeply aligned with Sara's values, her sensitive nervous system, and spiritual practice. So there are 3 books that Sara has written. The third one comes out, well, actually, the third one came out in May of this year. She's also a certified internal family systems practitioner, which is a very, very helpful therapeutic healing modality and system for ACAers or adult children who come from a dysfunctional background. So many people in my ACA support groups are really experiencing very, very positive, helpful benefits with IFS. So thank you for doing that. And Sara, you weave evidence-based psychotherapeutic, this healing model of IFS into everything you teach. So that is awesome. Me too. So just to mention your books, The Way of the Happy Woman and The Book of She. Sara's website is saraavantstover.com. Sara, you have a podcast, I believe it's called Herself, and a newsletter, which is Sara's Sunday Journal. So welcome again, Sara, to our Adult Child in Recovery podcast. I'd love to start out with, if you could tell who, our audience and, whoever can be helped by this, by your contribution and you showing up in the world the way you do. Can you tell us about your journey, especially the heartbreak journeys that led you to write this book or these books?
Yeah, thanks for asking. The first heartbreak journey, I would say, relates to your community and what you're teaching here, in that I grew up in a household where both of my parents were alcoholics. And gratefully, they're both in recovery now. But as I'm sure listeners can relate, it was heartbreaking to be born into that kind of a family. And while I love my parents and I love my family, it was a very, very challenging childhood. So I think that was really my first heartbreak. And in many ways, it set me, none of us are immune to heartbreak in our lives. We're going to experience it many, many times over. But I think that initial heartbreak set me up for some future heartbreaks to set the stage for me to do even deeper layers of healing. So the heartbreak that I open up my third book with, and that my third book is called A Handbook for the Heartbroken.
Mhm.
In that book, I cover serial heartbreaks that I experienced between 2016 and 2020 that struck every area of my life, not just my intimate relationships, but also my health, my finances, my career, even just my own identity. And so that initial heartbreak was I was engaged, and my former fiance came home one night and told me that he had been cheating on me. And it was not just once, it was not just with one person, it was with many people over many years. So I realized that I had been living inside of a lie for all those years. And that just created a lot of confusion. What was real, what wasn't. And that set me up on just a much deeper healing journey, particularly using the tools of IFS to really explore inside of me what parts of me, what young parts of me have been unconsciously running the show in my intimate relationship, to have even led me to be attracted to this man, to be in this kind of relationship, to be set up to marry him, and to have missed obviously some big red flags to have gotten this deep into this kind of a situation.
Yeah. And to not only be in this kind of relationship, but also to stay uh, for quite some time. I don't know how many years you were with him, but that's definitely a character trait of adult children to stay too long. So how did you actually? So you started, uh, I guess, watching videos and then taking courses, and I know you're an IFS level 2 practitioner, internal family systems. How did it actually heal your own inner wounded parts, especially your inner critic? And how long did
Yeah.
that take, that process, that
Well,
journey?
I'll say I didn't start with IFS with watching videos and things like that. I was introduced to it in 2015 from one of my longtime mentors who I've been working with since I was in my 20s, who had gone through all three levels of IFS. And this was before it became very popular and not many people knew about it, but she started to weave it into the work that we were doing together. And I found it to be very profound. And then in 2016, when all this blew up, in my conversation with her, she just really challenged me and said, you need to be doing IFS therapy at least once a week for an extended period of time right now, so that you can really just go to these deeper layers in yourself. It's time.
Yep.
And so I accepted that challenge, and I found someone to work with, and I worked with her once a week for a series of years. And in that work together, you know, we spent time with so many of my parts, with my inner critic parts, with parts that were kind of pushing and overworking to avoid feeling pain, parts that felt insecure, parts that were willing to go along with things, people pleasing parts rather than setting a boundary. So
Hmm.
just a whole host of parts. When I emerged from that several year period, I felt
Right.
deeply transformed. I really, really felt a level of wholeness inside of me that I had never felt before.
Yeah.
And it was at that time that I then realized, oh, I want to train in this. So it was in
Hmm.
early 2021 that I stepped into my first IFS training. So my
Wow.
studies were first my own direct experience for several years, and then it moved into more formal training.
Got it. That's perfect. So can you explain a little bit to people who are new to IFS, um, how it's so helpful, especially to heal like the inner judge and critic, and why it doesn't work to quiet or silence those those really often loud, annoying voices.
Yeah, so we've all heard the saying, like, what you resist persists. And
Yeah.
it's like that game of whack-a-mole. Like if you try to hit something down in a hole, it's going to pop up in another place.
Yes.
And, like just creates more like is another way to say it. So if we combat something with aggression, we're going to get aggression back. And
Absolutely.
so what IFS helps us to see is that, its basic premise is that all parts of us are fundamentally good. Regardless if they're saying bad things to us or to other people, or they're doing things that seem harmful to us or to other people, we know that at their root, if we really drill down, we really get to know them, they have a core positive intention. And they've taken on these extreme roles out
Mm-hmm.
of duty. Like that they're heroes in many ways.
Yep.
And they stepped in when they were young, when we were very young, and we didn't have the resources internally or externally to protect ourselves. So they stepped in to protect us in various ways, whether that was speaking negatively to us so that we didn't fly too high above the radar and maybe put ourselves in danger in various ways,
Mm-hmm.
or forcing us to people please, so that again we didn't speak out against authority figures and put ourselves into danger. And so IFS helps us to befriend these parts, to really understand their histories and their own woundedness, and to help to return them to their innate roles, to their innate essence. And when we do that, then it's like an alchemy. Like they move from being these protective parts to being rewoven into the fabric of our wholeness, and they return to us a portion of our own power. And that's the process of healing, just bit by bit or part by part.
Right. And it's, you can't rush this process, but it's such a sacred, profound system that really, yeah, helps us to heal and become whole again and integrate instead of clear or, fight, flight, or freeze. These parts are actually being given a voice so we could actually sit and listen to what they need that they never had possibly growing up. So I think that I really applaud you for being an IFS practitioner. It's to me, it's the most healing system that I could think of, that's really worked for me as well. How do you tell the difference between maybe thinking just like focusing on positive thinking and then spiritual bypassing? Like, where's the fine line there?
Well, again, if we look at our parts, and we can have parts that say like, no, we don't want to feel the anger, or no, we don't want to appear sad because it might upset other people. We need to kind of put a smile on, or turn that frown upside down. And then those are parts of us. And if they are taking over, then they are overriding the parts of us that feel sad, or that feel angry, or that are feeling anything other than happy and cheerful and high vibration, as spiritual communities say.
Yes.
And so we want to move into more of a self-led orientation. In our self energy, which is the essence of who we are,
Mm-hmm.
is about being with whatever is here. It's like our inner parent, inner conscious parent,
Yes.
that sees, oh, I have a happy child over here and I have a sad child over here. And how can I be with them both? How can I really listen to them, see what they need, help to
Yes.
support them? So this is a
Mm-hmm.
method of like in and through and being with
Mm-hmm.
from our essential self, rather than having parts lead the way and say, no, we can't feel this. We can only present this dimension of ourselves that is bright and shiny and happy.
Exactly. It's about like just whole acceptance, or just self-acceptance, instead of rejecting and disowning those parts of ourselves, like our shadow selves and um, inner critic part and manager part and firefighter part. Those are just, archetypes, versions of ourselves that overtake us. So it's a question of kind of like reestablishing that connection and merging with your true self, your core self. And that's so important because I think a lot of adult children who are still carrying these unresolved wounds don't even know who they are. They've totally like lost, they never had a chance to really establish your own identity and sovereignty. So this is amazing work that you're doing. Thank you for that again. I wonder if we could talk a little bit for the next few minutes about your books, The Way, the Happy Woman, and the Book of She, and what kind of led you on those journeys to write those
Sure.
books.
So The Way the Happy Woman came out in 2011, and that was like a compilation of everything that I learned in my 20s. So that came out in my
Mhm.
early 30s. And in my early 20s, I graduated with high honors from a women's Ivy League college in New York City. And I found out upon graduation that I had the early stages of cervical cancer. And I had to really, really adjust how I was living because these wounds, these childhood traumas was kind of running the show. And I had some pretty severe eating disorders, which included exercise addiction and bulimia, cycles of bulimia and anorexia, and also just pushing myself in my academics that had been one of my escape modes since I was young, in addition
Yeah,
to my love for learning, but there was a push to it. And so
yeah.
that was a wake up call for me. And at that same time, there was synchronicity, and I got a job offer to teach at a school in Thailand. And because Thailand has great healthcare, I felt like I could monitor my condition there and went over there to teach and ended up staying for 9 years. And it was really
Mm.
life changing. And there I was introduced to Buddhism. And so Buddhist meditation became a central feature of my life, got much more involved in yoga and just natural healing and all of those practices. Then I wove into my first book, which is really teaching women how to align with seasons and cycles to have more physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health. And then my second book, The Book of She, came out in 2015. And that was really a compilation of things in my 30s. And it's putting a feminine perspective on Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. So it's about a modern woman's heroine's journey and really looking at how we can take challenges in our lives and transform them into our power. And so it leads women step by step through kind of these different phases of the heroine's journey.
Amazing. They both sound, I'd love to read those these books. They sound super empowering, especially for, adult children who were, suppressed and disempowered so often. We're I think that this is very needed in our culture, in our toxic culture. So, I mean, thank you for writing these books. What about your podcast? I just wondered, I'm just curious what you talk about on your podcast. What is that dedicated to? Is it similar or something different?
Sure. Yeah, it's called Herself, and it's a blend of internal family systems and women's spiritual entrepreneurship. So we talk about dimensions of our inner world, things like self-doubt, self-sabotage, overwhelm,
Hmm.
unworthiness, inner critic, and also external things like managing our time and our energy and approaching marketing from a heart-centered perspective and
Hmm.
these types of things. So it's like blending the inner and outer for women business owners and entrepreneurs.
Again, much needed, a much needed service that you're providing. I mean, I'm sure not the only spiritual entrepreneur. I've been working for myself since 2007, starting out as a Reiki master teacher back then. And then in 2013, working exclusively online, which is a whole nother ball game. So, like actually have a very nice practice now, and I see people all over the world, but it definitely has its own challenges. Just to get noticed. A lot of people are working online. So I really appreciate what you're doing to help people like me get across their unique message, because everyone does have their own unique message. So yeah, that's great. Is there anything else that you wanted to share about your struggles, and any words of wisdom or inspiration for whoever is listening who is meant to be here in this conversation?
I would just say that you're never behind, and there's nothing wrong with you, and healing is
Yeah.
possible for all of us. And there were so many points along my journey, both like the several year journey in my latest book, but also just throughout my life where I just felt like I am damaged beyond repair.
Mm.
There's something horribly wrong with me. And
Mm-hmm.
just to say that that's a common part of the human experience. And it doesn't mean that it's true. That's just coming from parts of you who are feeling some hopelessness and despair and frustration. And healing and wholeness it's already in all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Just a matter of getting the right support to like metabolize the pain and metabolize the experiences that we're still holding within us. And it takes time and patience.
That's exactly right. And you're right. I was just sharing this because I also, in my own work with my adult child recovery process, noticed this part of me that just wanted to keep going, like, get this over with. Like, I don't want to be reminded of the pain. I don't want to relive it. I want to just get to the finish line. And that's really not, that's actually more of a disservice than a service, having those types of thoughts and beliefs, like this impatience and this frustration. And then I was able to just getting the support from, people in my circles, like, that's not really how it works. It's, supposed to be a slow process. We can't rush through healing. It's not about rushing. And healing is also, not always a fun, pleasurable process, and it's okay to shed a few tears along the way and to allow yourself to feel your feelings, all of them, and to welcome all your parts. So thank you for that, Sarah. And also for that inspiring message. So again, Sarah's website is saraavantstover.com. Her podcast is Herself. Newsletter is Sarah's Sunday Journal. Thank you, Sarah, for being on the show today. I really appreciate your presence and the work that you're doing in the world. So thank you again for being here. And if anyone would like to get in touch with me for an inner child session or child mentoring coaching session, I'm at bonzanalighealing.com. And thank you again. It was a pleasure meeting you. And yeah, keep up the good work.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.